Welcome viewers to our next episode of Expert Speak series brought to you by Aditi Organic Certifications, where we have been talking to various experts in the field of agriculture, organic farming, sustainable living, among others. We've also brought you many agri-entrepreneurs as well on this show. And today I have a special guest with me, Kiran Bhaskaran. He's the founder and chief consultant of India Farm Schools. He holds wide experience in designing and developing indigenous food and fruit forests and integrated farm systems, and also working very closely with the social sector. Today, he will be talking to us on understanding how an indigenous fruit forest actually functions. So, Kiran, really nice to have you with us here today.
Thank you so much, Karthik, for that brief introduction. It's a great pleasure to be, amongst the experts that you have been actually inviting. Although I still believe that nature takes me to school on a regular basis, on a daily basis.
Absolutely, nature always and continues to teach us a lesson. It's up to us on how we are taking that lesson.
Absolutely, we're never experts, in terms of the natural
nature.
ecosystem.
Yes, so, Kiran, India Farm Schools sounds very interesting. Tell us a brief about what you guys do at India Farm Schools.
See, this was started in 2014. Prior to that, I've been an organic farmer myself, where I used to grow 15 different kinds of vegetables and market them myself. And I was also part of social initiatives where I used to actually market the products of women cooperative societies in Karnataka, in rural regions, because I'm an MBA. And I also have a brief stint with the corporate as well. So I had quite a bit of a skill to actually market these products of the cooperative societies. So when I started this 2014, back in 2014, the whole intention was to actually I used to actually train a lot of conventional farmers who are in the interiors of Karnataka. And when I used to actually, tell them about organic farming, the sustainable agricultural practices and everything. So they used to actually feel a little, edgy, they never used to actually, welcome it with open arms, so. Because obviously there are a lot of backlogs with regards to the a conventional farming system and the examples that are there around us with regard to farmers in crisis and everything. So obviously it is understandable from their point of view that they don't want to experiment with their livelihood. So but when I actually happened to talk to a few kids, a few children, so they were extremely welcoming. They loved the idea of actually growing food in the backyards of their schools. And how the vegetables grew. I actually thoroughly underestimated their excitement and the passion they would have. And that's how I actually started Indian Farm School. I started going to different schools in the rural regions and started introducing children to organic farming practices. And I would actually help them develop their own vegetable gardens in their backyards, and then grow them and harvest them, be party to challenges as well as joys of gardening. And at the same time, once they have harvested it, so we would have a potluck, where we would actually send these vegetables to their homes, and they would cook the vegetables back, and they would get it, and we would have a potluck where we would actually share the harvest amongst the ourselves.
Very interesting.
This was how it started, but then I actually started so
yes.
So that's how I actually started. And I started going ahead and started receiving a lot of consulting projects, because I have a prior experience with regard to organic farming as well. So I have been actually doing a lot of research as well, academics and stuff like that. And this has been a great initiative. And that's when I actually stumbled upon, I've been, as a first generation organic farmer myself, I never had a background or a mentor to actually, take me through the entire, process of organic farming. I had to actually learn by volunteering at organic farms and, ashrams and all that, and then learn from different people. So that was the entire premise. So there was a huge dearth of knowledge centers in India.
Correct.
So where, you could actually tell people who are interested in pursuing organic farming as to how to actually go about it and where to start and how to begin and, how to go through the entire process. What are the different challenges that might actually come up with them? And at the same time, a lot of times when we actually talk about, pursuing organic farming or farming for that matter, the first is the domestic. There is a lot of domestic repulsion. You get a lot of resistance from the domestic field, and at the same time, a lot of people actually look down upon you, even if you had actually pursued a lot of a lot of corporate whatever industries that you have actually been successful in.
True.
So obviously, you needed somebody who could actually handhold people. And at the same time, you could tell them as an example that, you could do this and it's completely viable. You can actually pursue it and stuff like that. So that's how we actually ended up actually starting this.
Very interesting story. And, you're very right. A lot of the agri entrepreneurs out there do not have that kind of a mentoring system that's available purely from the agri sector standpoint. So from Aditi, there's a small step that we've taken to see how do we bring experiences from experts like you, which can be beneficial to a lot of aspiring people from corporate who are trying to get into farming right now. So very interesting and inspiring journey that you have. So coming to our topic today that we were talking about, which is IFF, right? So how can we select the right indigenous fruit plants for IFF?
See, it's a very pertinent question, and at the same time something which is what do you say? It is very internal for that matter as a journey in terms of developing a farm or something like that. See, one beautiful example I'll tell you about a story, where I was actually doing some research with regards to developing an indigenous fruit forest, and I was actually traveling around that region. It is in Chamarajanagar, and it is one of the most driest districts of Karnataka. In southern Karnataka. So obviously it receives about 500 mm of rainfall. It falls under extremely semi-arid region, and because it falls under the rain shadow area of the Satyamangalam forest. So obviously we had a lot of challenges, and at the same time the soil was very bad in terms of the pH. The pH itself was around 8.5. So that was the extent of salinity there was. And obviously the borewells were failing continuously in the region, because obviously the soil of that particular region is black in color and it's very clayey. So obviously, since it is very compact, it gets compact, and as soon as you have rain, the rainwater does not percolate down. So there's a lot of challenges with regards to that. So obviously, I was very I did a little bit of research with regards to what kind of crops they were growing. So the first one was the mangoes. They used to grow a lot of mangoes. Mangoes actually text pains. That mangoes have a very tenacious and resilient root system, and they can actually percolate or drill down even harshest of soils. So which is actually understandable. But I was actually looking at something which was not very conventionally pursued, which we could actually grow in a farm like that. So that's when I actually came across this amla tree in the vicinity of a school, a public school, a government school, which received no watering, no pruning, no taking care of in terms of the manuring or anything. But still, the tree was lit with amlas.
Wow.
So that it was like the entire tree was bogged down by the weight of that particular the fruits that were there. So this gave me a beautiful hint that if this could actually survive without any assistance or any taking care or anything, so obviously we could actually consider growing this in the farm. So that's how I actually came across this thing. So that's how we ended up coming up with a lot of we shortlisted a few trees like this. There were guavas which were growing in the backyards of the houses and everything, and there were a lot of mango trees as well, as I had mentioned, and jamuns So jamuns are, are again, a beautiful this thing. And like this, jackfruit, a lot of, these trees actually were sustaining and surviving without any care, without any, assistance or attention, or seeking any attention from anybody. And at the same time, they yielded really nicely. So this was the biggest hint that, the nature actually is promoting these kind of trees. So obviously we should actually go for something like this in our farms as well. So that's how we actually got this, and we started planting them. So, and the beautiful thing is that, if you have these trees actually yielding so much without any attention, what happens if you actually give even a little bit of attention to them? So that's something which is very natural, and at the same time
very interesting. So I think
this you should actually,
yeah. So yes. I think the key is to keep our eyes open and see Absolutely. The hints which nature is giving to us.
Yeah, I actually conduct first generation farmer trainings. So the first thing I actually tell them is that if you want to be a very good successful organic farmer, you should have the basic talent of being an observer.
Yeah.
If you have a very good observation skills, you will be like a superstar in the organic farming field. Yes.
So true. So, Kiran, so how does the IFF actually function, and how does one go about setting it up? So is there like a minimum area required, or minimum facilities which are needed for them to go forward with this?
So I'll take this in two sections. So two parts of the question. The first is how do you actually establish something like this in a farm or something like that. So the first is that, we categorize the entire, the species, the categories of the trees that we are introducing in the fruit forest. The first is the primary fruit forest, which is primary fruit trees. The primary fruit trees is basically the trees that will end up, lending, giving you the revenue. So to actually keep the entire operations running and everything. The secondary fruit trees are the ones which actually are there for the sake of increasing the biodiversity in the in the entire field. And the third one is the support vegetation. Support vegetation are the trees which will actually end up. So obviously, as I had mentioned, the entire field was extremely hard to actually drill down. It takes a lot of time for the fruit trees to grow, isn't it? So we needed somebody, a few categories of trees which would actually drill down the entire, the soil very quickly, and at the same time it should enrich the soil. It should grow very fast so that it gives some kind of partial shade to the trees that we are actually trying to grow. So because it's very hot, there are chances that there is a mortality rate of the fruit trees also up to 40% or 50% of the trees actually won't survive during the first year. So that's why we actually ended up growing sesbania, moringa trees, and gliricidia, all these trees amidst these trees. So this is the third category. So obviously they'll also actually act as the fourth category, which is the live mulch, and at the same time you could actually use it as green manure as well. When you keep chopping them and dropping them every 2 or 3 months, they'll keep growing back. So that's the thing. And the fourth one is the whatever grass that we have. So the native grass. So grass actually ends up carpeting the entire field, blanketing the entire field as a live mulch, which will actually hold a lot of moisture, and at the same time it will not let out the nutrition to escape the entire field. So you have to actually categorize these things, and you have to come up with a systematic process, a process of actually designed to actually establish the entire thing.
Okay, and I think your company helps out with
the designing, yes.
With the designing and planning.
Correct.
Okay.
And one beautiful thing you have to actually consider is to go for pollinators. So that's one category that I actually left out. So the pollinators are basically the flowering trees. The trees that will bloom during a particular season. Like if you have mango trees during the time when the mango blooms, you have another flowering tree which is lit with a lot of flowers. So that way you have a lot of promotion of the pollination that is happening. So this way you have a very systematic and sustainable ecosystem that you're trying to develop, where you don't have to actually take care of them.
Okay.
That's one thing. The second part of the question, the area that is required, for the minimum, this thing, as I have actually mentioned, it's a lot of trees, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it has to be sustainable financially and with a lot of revenue generation, systematic revenue generations and all that, I would suggest to people to go for at least 1.5 acres or 2 acres of land,
Okay.
so that you have some kind of revenue that is coming up
okay.
on a regular basis. Yes.
Okay. And what about do you also recommend any short-term crops which they can grow, so that from an ROI standpoint also they can start seeing some returns coming in? And
Absolutely.
If so, what would those be that you would recommend?
See, I would predominantly I would not suggest in the beginning itself, because if it is very if your land happens to be in the Western Ghats, where you have a lot of enriched soil and all that, you can definitely try growing a lot of short-term crops.
Okay.
But if it is very degenerated, where the water is very minimal, you don't have a lot of water and all that, you have to be a little cautious with the kind of crops that you're trying to grow. So the first is obviously you can actually try growing a lot of herbal plants, such as the different kinds of mints there are. And you have aloe vera also, which actually sustains and survives even with very little water. It does not require a lot of water also. At the same time, you have ashwagandha as well, very Ayurvedic this thing. So you can actually, my mother used to do a very beautiful thing. She is a hobby gardener. So what she does is she actually mixes a lot of the green leafy vegetable seeds. She mixes it. And she just broadcasts it during just prior to the monsoon in the backyard, household backyard, and it germinates and it grows on its own. Wow. And it seeds on its own after the first harvest and stuff like that. She leaves some of the plants behind. She does not harvest them, so that the healthiest ones, so that it keeps reseeding themselves for the rest of the year. Yes. So this is something that you should actually consider if you are going for a fruit forest, because you cannot bring in any tractors, you cannot bring in heavy machineries, or you cannot disturb the topsoil for a very long time. I would say never disturb the topsoil. So you have a very limited scope in terms of actually disturbing the soil. So that's why I would suggest you actually come up with a mix of crops, short-term crops, and harvest, let the nature take its due course. Yes.
So since we are talking on the topic of nature taking its due course, we are now witnessing drastic climate changes, right? So it's been a topic of discussion now across the globe, but unfortunately it still continues to just be a topic of discussion. So in view of these drastic climate changes that are happening, and there is adverse weather, so we've been seeing monsoons like never before. What are some ideal fruit plants suggested as part of IFF?
See, I would again, go back to my first answer. Always be observant. See what kind of trees are actually sustaining and surviving like a king, without any, assistance from anybody. Because I'll tell you another example. One of my friends, backyard has a 60-year-old guava tree. So it is a massive tree. And it's native variety. We have actually grown up playing on those trees, and we have harvested the guavas, and we used to eat until we are sick of guavas for the season. So this is a beautiful example, isn't it? So a typical guava, which is native to that particular region, ends up actually surviving for at least 80 years. And for most of 80% of its lifetime actually is fruiting. So you have in those trees you have about at least several hundred kgs of guavas being harvested every year. So that's because it's massive, and at the same, it's not been actually tampered with. So always go for native varieties of trees. And promote native varieties of trees, because there are very few these days where you can actually collect these and try to grow them in your farm. So I would suggest please consider growing the native varieties of whatever trees that you see are growing without any
efforts which are needed.
Yes,
that's so true. That's so true. So my last question, Kiran, would be, where is the right source for these special fruits, the seeds or saplings which are required? Where could one find the right source for it?
Yes, a very pertinent question. Most of the times when we actually talk about organic farming and all that, we don't entertain or promote hybrid varieties and all that. So that's predominantly because of its indigenousness and at the same time its ability to sustain and survive. So one of the beautiful example is that in one of the fruit forests, we haven't had any pest infestation happening for the past 10 months or so. So it has actually attained some kind of sustainability and ability to repel pests on its own. So that's predominantly because of the indigenous varieties that we have actually gone for. So I would suggest for most of the trees that you that you want to actually promote, one example to actually consider, one source you have to actually consider is the the local forest nurseries. So forest nurseries of every district has a forest nursery these days. So every district actually promotes native varieties of every forest nursery actually promotes native varieties of fruit trees. So you will actually find amla trees, you will find native varieties of guava trees, a lot of other different kinds of trees that you can actually promote as a commercial this thing. It's not just about the agroforestry, it is also about revenue generation and all that. So you can actually consider visiting your nearest forest nursery or a reputed one. So you have a biocenter on the Banerghatta road of Bangalore, where they actually promote these fruit trees and everything. You can actually go inquire about it, do a bit of mystery shopping, so that you can find out where the sources are and how they are actually being grown from the laborers. Don't do it with the officials also, they will actually give you a lot of gyan. But laborers are the first primary source that you can actually get a lot of first-hand information. And the second part of this thing is that if you have so obviously a lot of trees such as the Gliricidia and the support vegetation that I spoke about earlier, for those trees you will have to actually find out the farmers who are actually there are a lot of farmers who are saving these seeds, who are actually promoting these seeding and everything, and seed generation and also propagation and everything. You will find all these trees actually growing in every village. You will find drumstick growing in every village household kitchen gardens and everything. You can actually procure from there and propagate it, and you don't just plant it. If you have a lot of seeds, share it. You can actually propagate it within your farm. That way you have the indigenousness and at the same time nativity, because it is completely indigenous to your land. That tree has actually understood the environment and the ability and the abilities and the challenges, how frequently it got rain, what is the pH level, everything has been stored in that seed. So if you actually replant that back into the soil, you have a better ability of the trees to actually, again, as I said, live like a king.
So I think net what I've understood, a lot of insights, but net what I've understood is nature is the teacher. Be a student, be observant, and learn from that and propagate as well.
Absolutely.
So really nice talking to you, Kiran. So I'm sure a lot of people who are hearing this episode will have a lot more questions, or they may need directions on how to go about it. So where can they find you on social, website, anything?
So we have a website. It's called www.indianfarmschool.com. You can actually write to us. There's an email ID and for a telephone number there. And at the same time, you can actually reach me on LinkedIn as well. I'm Kiran Bhaskaran. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can write me there as well. And I guess we have a social media page where we actually promote school gardening. Since the pandemic, we haven't been able to actually reach out to a lot of kids, so it's a little idle. So, but you can still reach out to us there.
Wonderful. So I would in fact encourage all our listeners and viewers to reach out to Kiran, and there's a very interesting concept, and I think it should be propagated all the more. So really nice talking to you, Kiran, once again. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you so much, Karthik. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and a privilege.
Thank you.